Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by the turning of the tide. We were actually just talking about this before we were recording right now. My brother, myself, and our very special return guest, one of our favorite 49er influencers, one of our favorite fans, Jonny Dells, is back here to join us for this recap on what was a major turning of the tide. As I was just saying, this was the game that changed everything and really put us on a map in a way that just the NFL had refused to put us on. The NFL, pundits, analysts, the talking head shows. No one, you had pockets of people convinced at various times, but this was the game that turned the tide. And of course, we're talking about the game of the year. Yesterday morning, 49ers, Saints. But before we get into it, Raymond, why don't you let them know where can they find us?
You can like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast, and you can follow us on Twitter at @the_Goldcast, and you can also subscribe to us via Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube, all under the same moniker of the GoldCast. Like, subscribe, and comment, especially on YouTube, because that's where everybody tends to give their takes on what their predictions of the game is, and we always like to read some of those off to see how close people got or how far off the mark they perhaps were. And we love to hear from you, so that's the best way to get in touch and set up notifications so that you get notified when we go live, such as we are now.
Awesome. And then, Jonny, why don't you let them know where they can find you online as well?
Sure. They can find me at Jonny Dell's Football Academy on YouTube. That's Jonny Dell with no H. And also on Twitter at Jonny Dells.
Awesome. And Raymond, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ray Solis and Instagram at Ray Solis1.
Awesome. And I'm on Instagram at Rudy Solis3 and on Twitter at Rudy Solis3RD. All right. Here we go. We are so pumped. Everybody from 49er Faithful is so pumped. I have been getting messages all over social media from fans from everywhere. Just what an ecstatic win this was. We're going to break it all down. The greatest fanalist in the game is here. Your professor of fanalism is here. Our favorite special guest, Jonny Dells. He's in the house too. Class is in session. Let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
And then once again, for the people, let them know who you are, sir. Our special guest,
Jonny Dell.
Yeah. All right, guys. Man, this is a meeting of the minds. I'm very excited. Before we even begin the game, I'm just really happy to have Raymond and Jonny on the same GoldCast. Unfortunately, Raymond was not able to make the first time you were on, Jonny, and so this is very exciting for me to have both of you guys on here. Let's talk about the lead up into this game. First of all, they were saying this was the hardest stretch, 3-game stretch this late in the season that any football team had ever had to go through in the Super Bowl era. Never in the Super Bowl era had a single team had to play 3 teams with that were averaging 800 or more in the win column. This had never happened. 3 in a row. We had to face Green Bay at home and then on the road against the Baltimore Ravens and then on the road against the Saints. Baltimore Ravens, the clear-cut, undisputed best team in the AFC. And then the Saints, who most people were saying was the best team in the NFC before we played them. That they were the actual, even though we were the number 1 seed, the general consensus was that they were the actual best team in the NFL. Vegas had them favored by 3. We handled the Packers. We lost in a tight one to the Ravens, really tight one. And, there were some mitigating factors that I think made it difficult for anyone to walk out of that game going, well, it was a clear-cut Baltimore victory. Most pundits said, hey, if the weather wasn't what it was, we would have got a very different game. Whether or not we win or lose, that obviously is impossible to know, but clearly we had some mitigating circumstances. And then we go into New Orleans to face the Saints. As I already mentioned, Vegas had them favorites by 3, and pretty much even major Niner analysts and beat writers that I follow on Twitter all pretty much had the Saints. Raymond, you and I on our prediction show were very confident that the 49ers were going to win. I really wasn't a doubt in my mind. I'll tell you guys a great story. So I'm bartending NFL Sunday, and in front of me are 2 Saints fans. Drew Brees scores that final touchdown, 52 seconds left on the clock, and one of the Saints fans looks me dead in the eye and he goes, "Are you nervous now?" And I looked at him. I didn't even blink. I said, "No, not at all. We're going to win this game. We're going to win right now. I'm not even remotely nervous." And this was the moment, this is that moment that every quarterback has to face at some point. They got to go the length of the field, less than a minute to go, down, need field goal or touchdown to win. Jimmy G, it's all on his shoulders, and he delivers. They get down, and really the game-changing play, of course, is the pass to George Kittle. George Kittle tries to break off. They literally tried to rip his head off because that was the only way they were going to stop him, because had they not face masked him for almost, 15 yards, 15, 20 yards, he would have made a touchdown, and it would have been it. But Robbie Gould, with 2 seconds left on the clock, kicks the game-winning field goal. 49ers win 48-46. And you could just see it. There were Twitter videos of what looked to be, I'm not exaggerating, at least 100 49er fans marching through the streets of New Orleans. There were clips of us and had taken over whole clubs. I watched the highlight videos today, and I kid you not, the cheering for the 49ers was so loud in New Orleans. It was unbelievable. I want to start first. Let's start with our guest, Raymond. Jonny, I just want to get your overall impressions of this game. You're welcome back, and just what do you think? How do you feel today? We're recording this on Monday, 24 hours removed from what was everyone's calling the game of the year.
I'm getting a lot of memories back to 2011. I mean, if you look at the parallels between this game and the playoff game in 2011, it's pretty kind of startling. You have, while we may be the better team or seen with a better record, we're the underdogs, right? Everybody picks the Saints over us, just like 2011. We have a quarterback coming in that while he's led the team to a lot of wins, he's being questioned. Early in the game, we have a defensive back knock one of their guys out, and it comes down to a spectacular play at the end made by one of our tight ends. There's a lot of parallels to that game, and I'm feeling much like I did then, which is life can't get much better as a 49er fan, right?
Oh, yeah. No question.
Definitely.
You could just feel the energy amongst the 49er fans. I'm not even joking. I can't impress upon you guys how many 49er fans I'd never even met running up to me and hugging me yesterday during that game as we were watching it at the restaurant that I work at. It was just phenomenal. The energy, the high, you felt it. You felt it was that moment. This is I like to describe this moment. This is that Matrix moment. I talked about this before on a GoldCast a long time ago. There's that scene in the Matrix where Neo is running. He's being chased by Agent Smith, and he runs to the steps of the subway, and he can escape, or he can turn and face Agent Smith. And when he decides to stop, and he turns and he faces Agent Smith, and then right when he does that, the Morpheus and everyone's watching him on the computer screens, and they go, "What is he doing?" And then Morpheus says, "He's beginning to believe." And it's like that's the moment where Neo becomes the one. And this was like the Matrix moment, I feel like, for the 49er fandom, where it was like we all really begun to believe that this isn't just any type of 49ers team. This isn't just any type of season. This is something really special is going on right now. And this team is so for real. And I love all those parallels, Jonny. I didn't even think about it. The way you broke it down like that, that is, you're right. You're absolutely 100% right. The parallels are kind of crazy. Raymond, I want to toss it to you. Where are you at? What are your feelings on this epic game?
It was like the playoffs. It was exactly like the playoffs. I think Johnny Dale put it nicely comparing it to the 2011 game, because we've had 3 shootouts with this team since 2011 up to now. And these have been games when the defense was really good. In 2 of those contests, they didn't necessarily, put a lot of highlights in the role. Although in 2011, the famous Dante Whitner hit on Pierre Thomas was, early in the game that really set the tone for what would be the rest of the game. Although in this week's case, or in this past week's case, it was the big hit on Jared Cook to knock him out of the game, but not before he had done 2 touchdowns worth of damage. And we also got a penalty for that, which didn't exist back then. And although it didn't end with Kittle catching, making a catch 4 esque play, he was the driving force that on 4th and 2 that really kept us alive. And, Kyle Shanahan said in the post-game press conference that he thought he had like 8 plays ready to get drawn up to march the length of the field. And George Kittle, in one play with 3 defenders on him, got his yardage and then got an additional 15 and put Robbie Gould in position where we didn't have to run any more plays. So it was just spectacular. George Kittle's ability to A, get yardage after the catch, and B, to break tackles, his strength is just massive. I mean, he doesn't look as big as like Gronkowski or Tony Gonzalez, but there's some similarities there that just are undeniable. But to me, the thing that stands out with him is his ability to just, like, I don't know, his willpower is just on another level. There's something in him that just when he gets the ball, you feel so confident that he's going to like shed people and just, I mean, obviously it helps that he put on 20 pounds worth of muscle on the off season, because now he's even stronger than he was the past 2 years, because he just muscles his way through people to the point where, as you pointed out, they had to rip his head off just to try to get him down. And even then it didn't work. He was dragging the guy with the face mask. And then the other defender had to jump on his back and give his legs out from underneath just to pull his weight on. It took 3 guys to get him down. But by then the damage had been done. Plus we had 15 yards for the penalty, and it was over. I mean, the big weakness for New England going into that game was the pass, and we saw a lot of passing, and it matched. Jimmy G was able to match Drew Brees toe-to-toe the same way that Alex Smith was able to match him, and also the same way that Brian Hoyer 2 years ago was able to match him for the most part, but the defense couldn't keep us in that one when we needed to, and we ended up losing by 1 possession. But we won big in the games that counted, that were more significant, which was 2011 and now in 2019. And Jimmy and Drew actually threw for the exact same yardage, 349 apiece. So this was just an all around, this was like a boxing match where none of the boxers are blocking. They're just trading punches left and right, and that's it. There's no defense. There's no dodging. It's just like, nope, we're just going to keep punching, and then whoever's left standing at the end, that's the winner.
Absolutely. Johnny, answer me a question. I love the way you break down the film footage, and I know you're still working on all that. But what did San Francisco do that rendered the New Orleans defense so inept in this game? What was the secret to the 49ers kind of breaking down their defense? What happened in this game? I mean, both these teams, I think, did a successful job of rendering each defense inept, but the 49ers were able to get a couple key stops that really made the difference in this game. But what did the 49ers do to the New Orleans Saints defense?
Well, I haven't gotten to the film yet. It hasn't been released yet. But I can tell you, before this game, I did go back and I watched 4 out of New Orleans' last 5 games. And I was planning on doing a scouting video like I did for the Ravens, but I ran out of time last week. But one thing I noticed, and I was really wondering if Shanahan was going to do this, and he did, was that New Orleans is soft down the middle against the pass, especially with their linebackers out. I was watching their film and I was looking and I kept thinking, wait a minute, these look like different linebackers that are in, because at one point it looked like they were solid and then it looked like they're really weak. And then I started paying attention to the numbers and they were different linebackers. When Kiko Alonso was in there, he was performing very, very well. Him and Demario Davis were doing very well together. And then they would put AJ Klein in and it was a completely different defense. And so I went to PFF and was like, well, is this just me seeing this or what? And if you go to PFF, their rankings are night and day. Kiko Alonso's had like an 82 overall grade, where AJ Klein had a 39 overall grade. And both those guys were out. And so one thing I was wondering, because I saw the Saints early in games like to play man coverage. They like to put Marshawn Lattimore against the team's number one receiver. And Shanahan knew this before the game. If you pay attention, I went back and watched the game from the broadcast. Lattimore is on Kittle in the first drive. And that's why Sanders hits 2 big plays early in that game. So they went away. They anticipated man coverage, and they first went to a play that he would release outside, because it was I can't remember the guy's name for St. Louis, or New Orleans, but they released outside with Sanders.
Eli Apple?
It was Apple. Yeah.
They picked on him a lot.
Yeah, he hits him on an out-breaking route, and then they come in and they hit him on an in-breaking route. Go after him twice with Emmanuel Sanders. After that play, then New Orleans put Lattimore on Sanders, and that's when we hit Deebo Samuel on a slant against Eli Apple in man coverage again. And so we started taking advantage that they were trying to put their lesser linebacker, not Demario Davis, in like a lurk role, but Jimmy was looking him off. And so he was able to hit different guys in man coverage and stay away from New Orleans's strength on defense. And that point, then New Orleans couldn't just match up man to man. They had to move to a zone, which we ended up hitting more big plays against the zone throughout the rest of the first half. And then they went back to man in the second half, made some adjustments, but then we ended up beating them against man as well, because what Sanders had done in that game, they couldn't put Lattimore on Kittle. So Kittle was one-on-one at that last play versus a no-namer, a guy who just was not a big-time star on their defense. And so you see what happens, when you have the amount of skill position players we have now, where a team cannot simply put their best cover guy on Kittle or put their best cover guy on Samuel, you're seeing this offense just explode to a different level.
It's kind of like a pick your poison on the defensive side, where you can't double team. You have 4 pass rushers that can all get to the quarterback at a Pro Bowl level. And if you double team any one of them, you're putting your quarterback at risk. And so the same thing applies to the receiving core now, especially with the way that Emmanuel Sanders is an elite player, and Deebo Samuel has stepped up ever since we had that game where we had the third down drop that Deebo had, where it hit him in the hands. He also had the end zone where he dropped a touchdown. I feel like he's really stepped up since then, and now he's become reliable. The same thing with Kendrick Bourne. He stepped up since dropping those crucial plays that cost us a game. It took a loss for those 2 guys in particular to kind of wake up, and now they're playing at a level where they're as reliable as Kittle and Sanders, where Jimmy G has confidence going to them.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said in particular about Deebo Samuel, and I like that Jonny and you, Ray, both brought that up. Earlier in the season, right after the trade for Emmanuel Sanders, or right before, I think it was right before, I was talking about on the GoldCast that we needed somebody to step up. We couldn't just rely on George Kittle to kind of bail everyone out, or a running back squad. And Deebo has really benefited from 2 things. He's benefited from George Kittle being there, because he's learning from George Kittle. He's been really open about this, about breaking tackles and just the whole science behind that part of his game. He has the most broken tackles of any wide receiver in the league, and he's a rookie, and it specifically has come from working with George Kittle. And Emmanuel Sanders there it was the best trade it was the best midseason trade that anyone has done in the league. And he opened up the entire passing game at a level that no one else was capable of. But that allowed Samuel also to really rise and to thrive with Sanders in there. He really made the difference. And Debo really elevating himself and learning from both Sanders and from Kittle has really just made the offense so much more dynamic in the second half of the season. I mean, we really saw – it's been really interesting to just watch this team evolve. We were basically, a really fancy run-by-committee offense in the beginning of the season, especially as Jimmy G was still getting his feet underneath him. We really relied heavily on the defense to protect the lead. And slowly but surely, the team has evolved. And Emmanuel Sanders, the Emmanuel Sanders trade and Debo Samuel rising to the occasion really has allowed this offense to step into a whole different level, and we really saw it this past week. What about the defense, Jonny? What was New Orleans doing to put our defense in such a compromising position? We did not see a level of dominance. Raymond had predicted 5 sacks. I ended up predicting 3. We got 0 on Drew Brees.
Yeah, we missed the mark pretty bad on that one.
Yeah. So what were you seeing? What did New Orleans do to our defense that allowed them to be so successful? Because it was impressive what they were able to do against us.
Well, Drew Brees is one of the top 10 quarterbacks ever, right? I think that's pretty certain by this point.
Yeah.
So
his completion percentage is 10% better than like all time. It's 10% better than like Brady, Young, Aaron Rodgers. He's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. When I would watch him on film, he's just marvelous to watch because like you could see him, he'll come out pre-snap and drop back, look off to his left in his first 2 steps. I mean, completely off to the left, and then throw a pass into the flat on the right. On a stick concept or something, a really short concept that he'll know 9 times out of 10 where he's going with the ball before he goes in there. I looked up next gen stats before we went into this game. He's leading the league in fewest percentage of his passes thrown into tight coverage, which means that when he's moving defenders with his eyes all the time, and he did that to our defense. He moved our zone. We play a lot of zone, right? He moved our zone defenders like a master. And then 2, Jaquiski Tartt has not gotten a lot of love this year. I know Richard Sherman, I think we've all heard him in the press conferences talking up Tartt, how he's having this great year, and everyone's just kind of been like, he's mad. I think a lot of fans have just really been like, he's replaceable.
His absence was very noticeable.
It was huge. Marcel Harris, I could see it on the broadcast. I was telling my wife during the game, I said, Marcel Harris is playing a horrible game. We're really missing Tartt. He played a bad game. He took bad angles in the passing game. He took some really bad run fits. There was one in particular I remember seeing. You might remember it. It set up New Orleans' second or third touchdown. It was the third touchdown. It was when Taysom Hill went in for a touchdown. It was like 2 plays before that. They ran the ball down to the 3-yard line, and Witherspoon was pounding the ground and being really demonstrative. What he was doing, I could see it on from the broadcast. He was mad at Marcel Harris for taking the wrong run fit. He took his run fit and it opened up a lane for the run lane. So with this wide 9 that we play, your safeties have to fill C gaps a lot more. Harris kept trying to bounce outside on runs, and it would let them get 8, 9, 10 yards on a run up the middle. And then he was taking some really poor angles in the passing game. And so it was getting guys open. And from there, you start having guys
case
pressing.
In point, Latavius Murray had nearly 10 yards, average 10 yards a carry.
Exactly. And so then when you also have now your safeties can't be relied upon, your linebackers start pressing and they start trying to get too aggressive up front, and then they started attacking our seams, which are behind your linebackers and outside each safety. And so what they started to do was attack what was our weakest link on defense and keep exploiting that. And they found creative ways to keep doing that. So, one credit Sean Payton for a really good game plan, but it really threw everything off. And because Drew Brees was getting the ball out so quick, your pass rushers start it makes it so you don't want to run a lot of stunts. And if they're able to run up the middle, then you really don't want to do stunts. You can get caught on that, and we're already having trouble with your run fit. It's kind of one thing leads to another, a domino effect. Once they can start exploiting certain things, it takes away other things that you can do really well.
Raymond, what were your thoughts? What were you seeing on your side?
Well, New Orleans, offensively, they've been exceptional against zone coverage, and we play heavy zone coverage. So, but it's also what's gotten us to this point. So it wouldn't make much sense for Saleh to drop something completely different to try to stifle them. You got to go with what's working. And, in theory, you're saying, hey, our pass rush should be able to get to Drew Brees and force him into some bad throws, which complements our number one ranked pass defense. But it just didn't happen. Brees had enough time and was, as Jonny pointed out, was getting the ball out so quick that it was negating our pass rush. Although Nick Bosa played a terrific game despite not having the statistical numbers that people tend to glamorize over. No sacks, but he did have the TFL, and his pressure game is still on par, game in and game out. I know that stack totals eventually become, the big statistical number that people gravitate to, even when it comes to Pro Bowl voting. That is a number that is, heavily considered when they do those votes. But Nick Bosa's pressure game was definitely present in that game. D Ford was left early, and that certainly helped. That does not help us because the edge collapses at the same speed with both of them playing the edges the way they do. D Ford has the quickest step off the snap than anybody on our defensive line, but Nick Bosa can collapse his side of the pocket just as quick as D Ford can. And so missing his presence, I think, also helped Drew Brees in getting his ball out on time and protecting him. And because these guys both flip sides. We started to do blitzing and stunts in the fourth quarter, but I think at that point, Saleh was just trying to get something going because he wasn't able to stop him. And the running game outside of Latavius Murray was, absent. Alvin Kamara was a shell of himself. Taysom Hill had a few runs. He had like 5 attempts. He wasn't a huge impact. And Latavius Murray was really the one that was the bell cow for them. Conversely, our rushing offense was amazing. Mostert seems to be getting a lot of more attention now. He's doing it in the air and on the ground. But going back to the defense, I was surprised. I mean, you expect, some games to be challenging for the defense, which has happened this year, but never to the degree where you feel like they didn't show up at all outside of the forced fumbles. We did have a couple forced fumbles, one by Marcel Harris. If there's anything that we can give him credit for, is he did cause one of those forced fumbles. I don't think it was the one we recovered, though. I think it was the other one that DJ Jones got, which is the one that DeForest Buckner was able to recover. And that was those ended up being two of the most pivotal plays of the game. Outside of everything else that we gave up to Drew Brees and on the ground, there was 116 yards on the ground that we gave up. There was the force, both turnovers. There was a turnover by the fumble, and then there was a turnover on downs. Both of those turnovers led to scores, not just field goals, but touchdowns. Conversely, the pick that we gave up, which Emmanuel Sanders should have caught, but ended up getting tipped into the hands of New Orleans, that just turned into a field goal. And one of their touchdowns late in the game, also they had a failed 2-point conversion. So there was some big keys. I'd say there was like 3 big key stops that the defense had that ended up being just enough to allow us to edge the Saints at the end of the game. So even though the defense wasn't really there in its normal totality, it at least had a couple of flashes in the pan that were able to contribute to the win.
Nice. Okay, Raymond, I have a question for you. This is one of our favorite games to play here. Who gets your game ball and who gets your cold shower?
Cold shower I'd probably have to give to the defense just because I felt like even second half adjustments didn't seem to slow down the Saints at all. And Marcel Harris was a big part of it. You can see the impact that Jaquiski Tartt has on the defense. His angles are better. His tackling is better. He reads the run better. He plays the pass better. Marcel Harris just hasn't had the reps. We even shined Anquan Axum Jr. to the squad in case we need him. So, and I know that Tartt's still going to be week to week. I just feel like that first week bye is now even more pivotal because the game didn't come without its casualties. We lost Weston Richburg for the year. He's got a torn right patellar tendon. He's done for the year. Richard Sherman and D Ford are now expected to miss like 2 to 3 weeks. that means they're done for at least the regular season. Maybe the last game if we really need them, but at this point you're thinking playoffs for them. And Kwan Williams is in concussion protocol. DJ Jones has a sprained ankle. I expect both those guys to be there within the next game or the game after. But this time of the season, it's just really hard to sustain health in the game of football because of how physically demanding it is. And this is not just, it's not like we're the only team that's going through this. I mean, we play Atlanta Falcons this week. They lost what's his name? Trufant, and they also lost Calvin Ridley for the year. So they took some hits. Rashad Penny tore his ACL in the Rams game. He's done for the year. So a lot of teams. Lamar Jackson was limited in practice today because of a quad injury. Everybody, even the stars, are dealing with the physical demand of the sport, and it's just tough. But so it's unfortunate that we're losing some big names there. Although I thought that the center for Western Richburg, I forget his name, but he came in and played great. It almost was like a seamless transition. There seems to be no hiccup in the center position after West Richburg went out, which was great because now he starts the week with all of those reps, all of that conditioning and practice, which will help him prepare for the Falcons. Even though they're a bad team, they're a team that's been playing pretty good since the first half of the season. So they're not going to be a slouch, and they're not going to go down without a fight. That's not going to be an easy game. But to make a long story longer, my cold shower goes to the defense this one. I think it's without a doubt the easy one.
Jonny, who would you give your cold shower to?
Same thing, defense. I mean, they've been stellar all year, and Richard Sherman even said it. They didn't show up today, and it was yesterday, and it was a good thing the offense did. I mean, we allowed twice our average in passing yards. I mean, compare this last game to what they did to Aaron Rodgers, and you go, okay. I mean, we haven't allowed a 300-yard passer, or we allowed one 300-yard passer before this year, and that was from garbage time from Andy Dalton, right? So like this is not even close. I think the next guy had 200 yards. This is the outlier.
Right. This is the anomaly game. But I mean, we were playing a prolific passer who just also has been exceptional against the zone, which is our bread and butter defense, but also happens to be apparently our weakness according to Drew Brees and company. We allowed 3 times our point, the points that we allow all year. We allowed 3 times that on Sunday. But like I said, them stopping the 2-point conversion, stopping the turnover, nullifying, negating that to just 3 points, those turned out to be big difference makers too. But overall, they were pretty much not there. This was a shootout, through and through.
Agreed. I'm in the same boat. Definitely the defense. That was probably the most shocking aspect of the game, which you guys have already gone in at length. Now, Raymond, who gets your game ball?
Got to go to Kittle. I consider Jimmy Garoppolo because he did have an amazing game and was able to match Drew Brees. He was even slightly more efficient. He had less attempts for the same amount of yardage. And even though it was 4 TDs versus 5, the pick I would credit the pick to Emmanuel Sanders more than Jimmy Garoppolo. He did throw it a little bit ahead to him, but to me it seemed like it was catchable when you look at the replay. And the 5th touchdown was a trick play, a flea flicker to Emmanuel Sanders, so he was able to make up for it to a degree if you look at it from that perspective. But to me, I think George Kittle, because it was 4th and 2, game on the line, and he came through in the clutch moment. So that to me was kind of an easy one.
Ooh, I like that. All right, Jonny, who do you give your game ball to?
Can I give out 2?
Yeah.
First one will go to Jimmy. I mean, and here's why. The amount of criticism he's gotten this year, the big storyline this year has been from national media has been, is this a guy they can trust? He's the weak link on the team, right? We've heard that. And he's the guy that if they can't run the ball, can they win? Well, Cardinals take away a run game and we win. Everyone says, well, it's the Cardinals. They're a terrible pass defense. And they say, well, can he go up and outduel one of the premier top guys in this league? And he goes into New Orleans and does it. There's been a lot of attention given to Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson, who are the 2 guys who lead the race for MVP right now, right? I think everyone agrees on that. But think about this. Who would you rather have right now if your team is down by 2 scores, and you're in the fourth quarter and you got to throw to win, would you rather have Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, or Jimmy Garoppolo right now? Who do you think can throw the ball better? Who do you think can sit in the pocket and deliver the ball? Because we've seen Russell Wilson with that yesterday against the Rams. That didn't end well for them.
Right.
We saw Lamar Jackson have that against the Chiefs and the Browns. That didn't end well for them. Jimmy Garoppolo was down by 2 touchdowns in this game, had to throw to win, and he won. So, I mean, we're talking, I give a game ball there because I think he did something in that game that I'm not sure the MVP guys in the league would do. Now, that may be the homer in me and the fan in me saying that, but, and I know, some people, if they, especially Ravens or Seahawks fans, heard that, they'd want my head, but I don't care. But he played at an MVP level yesterday. And so I say the game ball goes to him. The other game ball to me goes to Kyle Shanahan because he outcoached Sean Payton.
Ooh, I mean, that's a good one.
You look at the blunders that Sean Payton made in that game. What's been the biggest knock on Shanahan? That he chokes in the big games, right? Well, who choked in that game? Who decided after the penalty on Jared Cook, or the penalty on Ahkello Witherspoon for the hit on Jared Cook, to go for 2 instead of kick the field goal? That was Sean Payton. He doesn't get it. So later in the game, at the end of the game, when they score a touchdown, why did they have to go for 2 after that touchdown? Because they went for 2 earlier and missed it. If they had just kicked a field goal, they've been kicking a field goal after that last touchdown to tie the game or to go up by 3. And so we can't kick a field goal and win. So now they had to go for 2 then. They don't get it. He tries a fake punt, doesn't get it. He got outcoached in that game.
Right, the Buddy Ryan rule. And it seemed like he wasn't, his reaction suggested that he wasn't aware that applied. And you think he'd know that. I mean, I haven't heard that rule in a long time because I haven't seen a play quite like that. But to me, it makes perfect sense. The defender doesn't know it's a fake punt, so he's playing the punt. So he's doing exactly what and by the way, there's holding on every single punt return.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, as Dean Blandino said it, if they allowed that, every time a team went to punt, they would fake and throw a pass. Every time. Yes. I mean, that's just what it would be because every time there would be pass interference.
And Buddy Ryan did it 6 times in a single season, which is why the rule even got invented in the first place.
Exactly. So, the other thing, too, that 75-yard touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders, that was the same play that George Kittle scored the touchdown against Green Bay. Because that's the Kyle Shanahan offense, that he can take the same plays and dress them up with different personnel in different places and run them over and over again. Teams will have no idea what's coming at them because he can move pieces around and hit you with the same thing. You just don't know you're getting hit with the same thing. So, I mean, so you remember the touchdown against Green Bay where Kittle was wide open? Same play, but it was Emmanuel Sanders.
Right, and then compound that with pre-snap motion and play action pass. Good luck.
Yeah, no. I mean, they don't know what's happening. They because you can't key. Okay, well they've taken this shot with Kittle, so we've got an eye on Kittle and account for him that he doesn't leak out the backside. Well, now all of a sudden Emmanuel Sanders is gone for 75 yards. So to me, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle Shanahan, game balls.
Those are good ones. I can't argue with that.
No, can't argue with that at all. My game ball, oof, that was good. Good, Johnny. Man, you came in throwing some haymakers yourself today. Jimmy G for me as well. This, I think, really, I think he's played brilliantly all season.
Statistically, he's been like a top 3 quarterback since the second half of the season.
I was going to say, especially from week 8 on, he really came into his own. It's what I think is kind of silly, especially when you get the talking heads talking about Jimmy G. This guy came off a devastating ACL tear. He's playing his first full season ever as a starting quarterback. And Shanahan has brilliantly orchestrated I feel like his evolution through the season. And, he basically had Jimmy G in a very kind of game managerial role for the first 4 or 5 games. And even then we saw flashes of brilliance like we did in game 3. with Jimmy G. We saw moments where he was capable of playing at this level.
We're also averaging 200 yards a game too, so his job was really easy at that point.
Yeah, and it's only as the demands of the season have gotten higher, as the demands of the competition has gotten stiffer, all we've seen Jimmy G do is rise to the occasion. He hasn't shrunk. He hasn't run away from the limelight. He's gone right into that spotlight, and he has risen to the occasion time and time again. He, in my opinion, is the most natural, best pocket passer that I've seen since Montana. Now, I'm not saying he's Montana. I'm not saying that he's, at that level, that Montana's the GOAT, one of the all-time greats, but just his pocket passer awareness, his ability to play from the pocket, and the kinds of passes he's capable of throwing in the big moments. This is the last time we saw a guy at this level with that much control was Joe. Steve, it took Steve a while to develop into that. And once he did, he was unstoppable. But he didn't come out the gate that way. Jimmy G's coming out the gate that way, the same way Joe did. Alex Smith never had this level. Kaepernick never had the accuracy that Jimmy G has. And Shanahan, kind of to your point, to yes and you, about Shanahan, Johnny, I think he's the best play caller we've had since Walsh. I think he's leaps and bounds among Harbaugh, and I really enjoyed Harbaugh. And we talked about that on the last podcast together. I think he's leaps and bounds above him. But this game for me, once again, in my opinion, it wasn't Jimmy G's coming out party. It was just another notch on the resume that, for me, solidifies that this is a great quarterback. And this is somebody that, as the season wears on and as we move into future seasons, you're only going to see him develop. We're looking at his first season. This is season 1. I mean, can you imagine where we're going to be? I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but can you imagine where we're going to be in 2 or 3 years if he stays healthy and he manages to continue on this track? This is the bottom rung for him. 26 out of 35, 349 yards, average of 10 yards a pass, 4 touchdowns. That's his. Yeah, I would say this is the baseline for this guy.
He's getting. We're watching him get progressively better in this season and in subsequent seasons, barring any injury, which can be said about any player, to be honest. But barring any of that, he's going to get better. He gives me the impression that he's going to get better because I'm watching him get better from game to game. And, to your guys' point, and for fans that may be on the fence about it, think about this. Joe Montana threw double-digit picks 8 times in his career. 8 times. That was 8 times he was giving the ball to the opponent in double-digit figures, okay? And there's plenty of other quarterbacks that are playing right now that have multiple double-digit interception seasons. It's hard to throw single-digit, to go a whole season and just throw in the single-digit category. It's really difficult to do that. The ones who have double digits are the ones who tend to take the most risks, but they also get the most rewards if they're able to hone their skills. Such as, Peyton Manning threw like 28 picks his first season. He was horrible in his first year. No one ever talks about that. Jimmy G's is 25 and 11. That ratio is amazing. His quarterback rating, he's 8th in the league right now. Touchdown totals for the year, he's 4th in the league in that category. Completion percentage, he's 5th in the league. This is a top 5 quarterback right now. And people, want to judge, if you start breaking down the numbers, his statistical rankings, he is 10th, or in some of the most important categories, touchdowns and completion percentage, which are by far some of the most important ones, he's top 5. He's up there. He's up there big time.
Want to hear something crazy?
Yes.
Since the Sanders trade, I have some numbers for you.
Yes.
Since the Emmanuel Sanders trade, if you took those averages out of every game since that trade and put it onto a 16-game season, 70% completion, 4,400 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, and 113 quarterback rating.
Insane.
Wow.
If you were to project out from that trade through 16 games?
Yep.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
And he threw those kinds of numbers in college. He was a big-time touchdown pass machine in college.
For me, again, especially the early hiccups in the season had to do with time away from the sport, recovery from injury. I have seen nothing from Jimmy G this season that has led me to believe that we're looking at like a Jared Goff, who, is really kind of a product of the system and really has had some serious regressions. And I think in general is an average quarterback, but doesn't really have the ability to be a great one, or Alex Smith, who, bless him, great quarterback. I loved Alex Smith, still love A. Smith. He's great. He did a lot of great things for this team, but his ceiling was just so visible, especially on third down. It was never more visible than it was. I mean, Alex Smith
eclipse 300 yards to save his life.
The worst third down conversion rate of all time. It's so bad.
1 for 13 every game.
Yeah, every game. And now, like you said, Raymond could never throw for 300 yards. Just could never do it. Could never get to that. Could never get to 300 yards to save his life. And his ceiling was so visible. And for me, as a guy who's watched every single game Jimmy G's ever played for the 49ers and seen every game in between, every year, he completely passes the eye test. And, like I said, a lot of these earlier hiccups, I'm like, he's getting reacclimated to the sport, getting reacclimated to the speed, holding onto the ball a little too long, little mistakes, but
those little things will get cleaned up. And that's something that does need to get cleaned up, because he's taken more sacks than he's needed to, because he's a little stubborn and he's always thinking to get the ball into one of his receivers' hands, instead of sometimes, what some of the greats do is they learn, all right, this play might be dead, so probably better to just live to pass or run another day and throw the ball away. He hasn't learned the throw the ball away thing. I mean, he's done it sometimes, but there's been times when he's kind of he's really just trying to make the play happen, and God bless him for doing that, because it's not easy to do the off-script stuff, like late in the touchdown pass to Kendrick Bourne. When the pocket collapsed, he rolled out to his left. The Kendrick Bourne improvised his route at that point because the play had gotten blown up, and then he found Kendrick Bourne in the middle of the end zone. That's the type of play that he's trying to do. That when the play breaks down, he's trying to make those types of plays. But there are certain instances when you just need to throw it away, and something like that, I think he'll clean up.
I think he's already gotten better at that. Like, you actually saw him going for that big first down run, which is something you hadn't really seen him do before. And obviously, if we can see it, Kyle Shanahan sees it. I mean, the guy's a genius. So if these are things that we're seeing, clearly these are things they're addressing. And I thought he did a pretty good job of addressing those issues in this game, better than I had seen him do in previous weeks. But yeah, my game ball definitely goes to Jimmy G. Now, gentlemen, one last thing before we got on out of here. We had a real big turn of events on Sunday evening. We had the Seahawks lose to the Rams. Man, that was...
They didn't just lose. They got beat.
So let's talk about the Seahawks for a minute. And I've talked about this before on the GoldCast. And this team has won... I think it's like 10. Is it 10 games? Is it all 10? It's a high number. I'd say between 8 and 10. I looked up the number earlier in the day, but I've already forgotten what the number was. But they've won by more. Almost every game this season's been by one score. It's been a one score win. I mean, they have been squeaking by on these victories, and this is something I've talked about before on the GoldCast. That, I believe they're capable of beating any of the big teams on any given Sunday. I do not believe they're capable of defeating the gauntlet of the NFC to get to a Super Bowl. And last night was one of those games where you just really saw the flaws that exist in this team. Jonny, I want to throw it to you first. What were your thoughts on that Seahawks-Rams game? Rams, people this morning, which I thought was hilarious. Oh, the Rams are firing back. I'm not scared of the Rams. I don't believe they're going to be in the playoffs. It's not going to happen. But the Rams gifted us first place back in the NFC. What are your thoughts on that game and the outcome, and how it has obviously had huge implications on the 49ers seeding?
I loved it. I mean, I hate the Seahawks. I mean, loathe the Seahawks. And so, not going to lie, because as I shared on the last time I was on, I lived in Seattle for a while. And so I have a lot of connections to people there. And I can tell you, after we lost to the Ravens last week and then they beat the Vikings on Monday night, I was getting tagged on Facebook and on all sorts of things. People telling me, thanks for holding on to first place for us. We'll take it from here. All this. I mean, they were running their mouths. And I had some fun with some people on Facebook. I'll tell you that after that game. But, you know, they're a team that they're going to fight the whole time, but they are not their talent level is not where it's been. And and like you said, if they go up against the gauntlet of teams in the NFC, I don't think they're not as talented of a team. They may be able to, you know, get a lucky play here. Russell Wilson pulled some sort of thing out of his butt that he always does, but I don't. You can't make when they've gone to the Super Bowl, it wasn't off of just, you know, fighting harder than everybody else or everything. It was they were an extremely talented team, and their defense was talented from front to back. They don't have that. They have an inconsistent D-line, and they have a very streaky secondary, a secondary that can be locked in at times and other times can be completely exposed. So, you know, I don't see them, and they don't have a rhythm offense. Their offense is going to be, we're going to bludgeon you, take a big shot, bludgeon you, take a big shot. If they can't bludgeon you, they're in trouble. And that's what happened against the Rams. They could not bludgeon the Rams. And they live for the explosive ball, and they didn't have that. I mean, their offense looked pitiful last night. So they're a team, like you said, I don't think they have the talent to match the other top teams in the NFC.
Completely agree. Raymond, your thoughts on that big turn of events in Los Angeles?
First place again. That was the first thing that came to my mind. We're right back to where we belong, in first place. And that loss is huge. I think we definitely need to keep pace in the W column, because I want the number one seed for this team heading into the playoffs. I think they need it. I want them to get rested because their chances are so good this year that's going to really help them going forward. And if they don't get it, they don't get it. But obviously, I think that's what Kyle Shanahan's going to be pushing for. I think that's definitely the mindset of this squad. But yeah, that watching it would be one. At first, I didn't have a lot of high hopes for the Rams, but their first game was a lucky win. You know, it was exactly our game, right? We missed the field goal, they go back and get it. You know, the Rams missed the field goal, they lose the game. You know, just some unfortunate luck where the team had them against the ropes and just, you know, and didn't execute in the moment that they needed to. And that's how they got by against us and the Rams. But this time was complete opposite. I don't know what Sean McVay did to change things around, but the pass rush was there. They flustered him. They stuffed the run. Aaron Donald was a menace. This team played much better to their potential. The problem is, you know, they have a lot of bigger holes. Their holes outweigh their stars, and they don't have. I don't see a lot of big linebackers. The linebackers are an issue for them. You know, that's why the game that we have for them 2 weeks from now is going to be a big one. I obviously think we're the better team, but some of the injuries that we have, that could help them. That could definitely help the Rams going forward. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You gotta, and those are when we're here to talk about the Seahawks' shortcomings in their unfortunate loss. And if you want an in-depth analysis on that, you have to go to the Hawkcast or to think about that more. You know, if you guys want to chime in with that crew and that crowd to learn more about the loss and the more in-depth analysis. But all we're going to say here is that we're very happy about it. We're back in first place in the NFC West, and we're back atop the first seed in the entire conference. So those are the two positions that I want for this team going forward, and I was very, very thrilled. Sunday was a tremendous day. I won fantasy, Niners won, and we got first place back in the two key categories that matter most for this playoff run. It was
that Rams win, and they looked dominant from the outset. I mean, they just looked like a team on a mission, and God
they
bless
looked
them.
like the old Rams, to be honest. Even Gurley looked like his old self to a degree.
Yeah. And they had mentioned before that they were really trying to save Gurley for these later weeks. I just don't think they expected to be in such a playoff deficit in terms of seeding and ranking. But now they're only a game back behind Minnesota. But I don't think they're going. I don't believe in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Minnesota's a much more well-rounded team.
Yeah. But we sitting on the high all day of this huge 49ers victory and then watching the Seahawks just hand us back the NFC West and the NFC. That literally we go all the way back to the 1 seed. It just, what a way to end what was already a glorious, glorious Sunday. And definitely excited and, excited to see where we go. A little concerned about the injuries, but, Atlanta is not the strongest foe. And this will be, again, you have to treat them like they're the most dangerous animal you've ever seen in a cage, because the second you don't, that's when you get caught. And Shanahan is so good about that. These guys are so locked in. And
if there's any team he knows, it's the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes, absolutely. And, I have no doubt, there is no doubt in my mind that this team will be looking right at Atlanta, square in the mouth, and treat them as just as if it was the Seahawks or the Saints or the Ravens or any of these teams. But our playoff dress rehearsal has finished. It was a great run, and now it's all about holding on for 3 more weeks to maintain this seed. As you said, we do not want to be in the wild card position. You don't want to have to go on the road for 3 weeks and go through the gauntlet of the NFC. You want a 1 week rest, and you want some of these teams to knock each other out and then face somebody. And I have to only play 2 games, the divisional and then the NFC Championship. That's really what you want to have happen, and it is imperative, especially with where the team is in terms of injury. It's imperative that we get that 1 week rest, and I believe we're going to do it. So, Jonny,
I think so too, because if you make it all the way, in theory, if you stay in the first seed and also make it to the Super Bowl, you're going to get 2 bye weeks in there to rest up and prepare for both those games, and that's going to be huge, in terms of health.
Absolutely. So, Jonny, any final thoughts before we leave?
I think we all need to become Green Bay's biggest fans right now.
Yeah.
Hope they get the number 2 seed.
Yeah.
See if we can face them in the NFC Championship game. Well, everyone's saying they want to see a rematch of Saints 49ers. I don't.
Yeah.
my heart can't handle that.
I love it. Raymond, final thoughts.
For all you Jimmy G doubters, his touchdown total is better than Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Patrick Mahomes, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, and Derek Carr, as far as relevant quarterbacks that are playing right now. Matt Stafford's actually injured, so he kind of doesn't count, but he was 19-5 up and before he got injured.
Ooh, that is quite the list, Ray. That is quite the list. My final thought, enjoy this victory, GoldCast Nation, 49er faithful. Have some more fun with it, relish in it, and then once we get to Preview Friday, it's time to focus on Atlanta. We will be back either late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning. We will be releasing, you got to hear this, Jonny. I want to hear your thoughts after we release this podcast, our top 11 greatest 49ers of all time. Candlestick Will, Raymond, and myself each put together our own unique list and did not reveal it until the episode. No one knew what anyone else did. There was some debates. We had a couple little debates about where people belonged or who made people's lists. We don't think, no one will agree with all of our lists. They're very subjective, but at the end of the day, all 3 lists were great. Some shocking additions on all 3. Everyone had at least 1 or 2 people where you're like, whoa, I had, wow, not in a bad way, but just I'm shocked that guy's on your list. And then there was even a couple times where it's like, I should have had that guy on my list. There was some of that too. So you
had Candlestick Willie?
Candlestick Willie.
That's amazing.
So we've got literally top 11 49ers of all time. We're going to be releasing that. We recorded this episode last week. We will be releasing it either late tomorrow or early Wednesday morning. Just comes down to our scheduling. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
And our very special guest host,
Jonny Dell.
Awesome. We will see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.
This is the GoldCast.